Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this special episode of this thing of ours, the Grand Stream, the Grand Torino. Back with you once again. I have a very special broadcast to bring to your attention in cooperation with our good friend Melissa O'Neill. And we're going to get straight into it in a second. But first, before I begin, as I always do, please don't forget our good friends over at the Little Farmer, thelittlfarmer.ie. We love our enzymes so much. We keep them alive. Wheatgrass and barley grass, mighty shot. Small wonder they're so good. 1 wheatgrass shot is equivalent to 1 kilogram of your leafy green veg, and barley grass juice is full of antioxidants. Just shake and shoot. You know you want to. And don't forget to enter in your promo code GT for your substantial discount. One quick announcement before I get going. We just had an announcement where we just found out today that the Gran Torino Facebook has been put in Facebook jail for 30 days for reasons unknown. Reasons. That was the explanation I got. No backward and forward, no explanation, not even a chance to say, well, which was the offending item. No, you've just been removed. By the by, and it's lucky that we have the opportunity to use YouTube now that we just had YouTube back this very same day on my birthday. It's your birthday, GT. We're going to give your YouTube station back to you for 1 more week before we shut the whole thing down. But in the meantime, let me introduce my next two guests. I think you're going to find this a fascinating conversation and something that I'm looking very much forward to. I'll bring Melissa in first. Melissa, how are you?
Good afternoon. Great now, thank you.
Good
evening,
stuff,
afternoon.
Melissa, I'm going to set up the premise. You've been working very carefully with our next guest, Rose. Going to keep Rose in the background for now. I'm going to let you two steer the conversation, and I'll step in and out of the way as much as possible. But before we do, let's bring our guest, Rose, in. Rose, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
I know, yeah, that's great stuff. Melissa, take it away.
Thanks, GT. I know, you've helped us put it out there for quite a number of months and weeks now. We've been calling on our local health workers to come out and support what we believe is happening behind the closed doors, from treatment to staffing to different areas of what's going on in the hospitals and what's happening in this, what we believe to be a pandemic here in Ireland. And thankfully, to this platform and your help and support, we've had hundreds of carers and nurses come to us. And Rose is a very, very special, brave lady that I've come across over the last couple of months. And Rose has been confiding in us the day-to-day work behind the closed doors of our hospitals that we were always kind of aware of, but didn't quite, have people come to us. And now the likes of Rose and many like her have come forward. So I would just like to introduce Rose this evening to everybody. And thank you very much, Rose, for coming on with us and being so brave to speak out with such empathy and care as a professional nurse. Now, I know you're very qualified in your profession, and you've spent many, many years working in different hospitals around Ireland. So I'm just going to hand it over to you now, Rose, and just tell us your typical day, March, since the pandemic and the COVID hit your workplace, and your typical day of any one of the members of the general public coming into A&E.
Thank you very much, Melissa, and thank you very much for having me on this evening and giving me the opportunity to speak. Really appreciate it greatly. Thank you. So I have been working with COVID patients since this pandemic kind of hit Ireland in kind of the end of February, March, and the experience that I have had has been a bit contradictory to what's been said by the media as such as well. So it's nice to have the opportunity to speak out and say what's actually going on behind closed doors in the hospitals in Ireland. So typically, if a patient came in through A&E, they would come in mainly with kind of COVID-like symptoms, and they would have the general admission to A&E that a normal patient would have. So they would come in through the A&E department, and they would be admitted. They'd be seen by the nurse who was attending, and they would have their vital signs, so the blood pressure, temperature, all that checked. They'd also have their bloods taken, and they'd have a kind of a cannula put into their arm in case they needed fluids or any kind of IV antibiotics or anything. And they'd also have a COVID swab done. At the start, when people would come in and they were kind of suspected COVID, they would be swabbed. So at the start, it was mainly people who just had symptoms that were swabbed.
So what you're saying is that every single patient is swabbed now compared to in early March, April, May. Is that correct?
That's correct now. So everybody who comes in through A&E or any of the other departments as a routine admission to hospital, part of their routine admission is to have a COVID swab. Yep.
So just saying on these COVID swabs, do people give consent for this COVID swab? Sorry. Written consent?
There's no written consent. No, it's expected of them. It's part of their admission to have a COVID swab done. And when a nurse would go to do the COVID swab, it's just expected that that's what happens, and that's it. And I don't think they're aware that they can say they don't want to have it done.
Right. And can you explain, in your experience as a qualified professional, and I'm sure you have had to do these swabbing testing during your day, can you explain to the general public, any training you got for that, and what exactly training did you get for this swabbing? And maybe if you go through that with us, Rose, please.
We didn't receive any kind of formal training as such. There was no training. It was for myself personally, there was a poster that I seen to show, it was a diagram of how to do it, and then my own colleagues kind of just told me how to do it. We were told in regards to swabbing the patient that it was done through the nose and also down the throat. So what you would do is you would insert the swab up the nose, one nostril at a time, to the point of resistance. So whatever you kind of hit when you hit resistance, and then you would twist the swab a number of times to get the sample. And then the swab would be taken out and put up the other nostril. The same thing would be repeated again, and then it would be introduced down the throat, both sides of the throat, and also twisted again, both sides.
And on any general, just one patient, say Rose, how many times may one patient be done in, say, 2 days or 1 week, or roughly?
Well, back initially when the patients would come in, as far as I knew, they were just swabbed the once. Maybe they were swabbed if they're going from one department to another, or if they're going from that hospital to another hospital, they would be swabbed if they're going for another appointment there. But now, at the moment, if there is a patient that is initially swabbed and they're going to, they might need, if they're positive, they need a second swab to prove they're positive. If they're negative, they need a second swab to prove they're negative to get them out of isolation so that they could go to a clean ward as such. But there could be, I have seen at times, I've personally experienced it myself, of patients being swabbed numerous times.
Numerous times. And, I think it's come out there from the HSC. I was watching an Oireachtas question there last week, and I believe that every single time that someone is swabbed, that's actually a case. So we're seeing a same person being swabbed several times by the sounds of it, and these are all then counted as cases, and we do believe this is where maybe some of the numbering of cases maybe be put up a little bit higher than what they actually are, and this is something that we would hope to have investigated down the line. So just again on the swabbing, can you tell us just in your general area how long that comes back, as in the timeline of the testing?
I have seen initially at the start when somebody would be, so this would be back in March in the initial stages, that if somebody was swabbed, it would be possibly 12 hours before the result would be returned. But now at the moment I'm seeing fast track tests being done. So they're swabbed, and then a fast track test proves if they're positive or negative. Generally, if they're negative, now they need a second negative to prove that they're negative to get them out of isolation. So The second one would just be routine, and that would be 12 hours after. The first one may be up to 6 hours.
So am I correct in saying, Rose, that people are kind of left suspected COVID for quite a long time until this, first of all, it was one test, now it's two tests, wondering this, I'm still kind of trying to get my head around that one. So they could be left up to maybe 24 hours, roughly, under suspected. And what kind of treatment, if you don't mind me saying, does someone that is actually suspected get within the hospital?
A lot of people who are suspected, there's a lot of symptoms that are connected to COVID that can actually be connected to a lot of other different conditions. So it depends on what their kind of past history is as well, and what medical history they have had previously and what symptoms have brought them into hospital. I'm seeing a lot of people coming in with there's a condition called COPD. It's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is a chronic lung disease. That they've had, and they've had it for many, many years, and it can be exacerbated because of the cold weather at the moment, and because of the weather conditions. It can bring it on and make it worse. It can they can get an exacerbation of COPD, which I'm seeing a lot of.
Yes, and it is quite a high disability in Ireland. Actually, there's quite an amount of numbers for the COPD in Ireland that I am aware of. We'll get the exact numbers before the week's out. But just can you tell us and explain to the people of Ireland, since the COVID started and what it would have been before, pre-COVID, what is the difference of the care of that COPD patient now compared to before March, which I think this is very important. And I'm sure this goes for cancer patients, extreme asthmatic, heart attack patients, all patients that are suspected COVID while they're waiting for these tests to come back, when we know they can do them in 6 hours. And some people are left waiting for maybe 24 hours suspected. And what is the difference in the care? And this is very important because we all know that extra care that's needed, especially in COPD and heart attack or cardiac arrest patients. So if you can explain that to us, that would be great, Rose.
In regards to the COPD patients, so if anyone comes in suspected COVID, they're treated as if they have COVID. So these people would be, they would be isolated, and they would also be treated the full gown. Like the nurse who would be looking after them would be in full personal protection gear. So they'd have the full gear on them when they went in to see these patients. Also, a lot of these people would have nebulizers and aerosol generating devices that they'd use that would help with alleviate the problems that they'd have with their breathing. They would also, in regards to if they're isolated in a room, if you had to go in to see this person, you'd have to gown up from head to toe. So sometimes people might, in regards to the amount of time it takes to gown up and gown down, they mightn't pop in to see them as regularly as they would have.
Okay, so it takes a lot more effort for the nurses to put all this gear on to get in. And obviously, I'm health and safety certified, and that's, it's all about keeping our nurses safe as well, and that's very understandable. But you're not going to pop in as often when you have to put all this gear on. That's understandable. And just how long are you allowed to stay with that patient? If we can go into more detail, Rose, on exactly kind of where you feel that patient mightn't be getting the actual care that they need. And can we speak a little bit more about the aerosols that they need as well, and what happened in the difference between, before COVID and since March, please?
Perfect. In regards to when it started initially with COVID in the hospitals, we were told as health carers that we were only allowed to spend 15 minutes. 15 minutes was the danger time. That was the exposure time that we're allowed to be exposed to anybody who had COVID. So you must remember that anyone who has COVID or even suspected COVID was to be treated as if they had COVID. So 15 minutes was all we're allowed to be in the room for, which I'm sure you can understand you can't do a lot in 15 minutes. And we had a thing, kind of like a buddy system where we'd have to tap out. So you'd set your alarm for 15 minutes before you went into the room, and then your colleague would be gowning up while you're in there ready to take over from you. But it meant you couldn't wash your patient properly. If somebody was on the toilet, you had to be out within 15 minutes. You can't leave somebody on a toilet. Like, it's just the standard of care just wasn't there as far as I was concerned.
Just like that, I'm a qualified carer myself, so I can understand where you're coming from and what a big change it was for you as a very qualified long-time nurse to be able to have to walk away and leave someone that is only suspected COVID, and that you have to treat them like this for maybe 24 hours waiting for these tests back, when we actually know in the same hospitals they could be back in 6 hours. So that person could have been minded a lot better, obviously, if they came back negative, that they just spent maybe 24 hours or 48 hours sometimes, and not getting the actual care that they actually needed or deserved. If we can just go into the difference, and I suppose this is what we are trying to put out here to the public, the difference as to what was done in March and the difference to what they're doing now. So there was less swabbing in March, although we had higher numbers of COVID. There was different things like, I believe, opening windows and keeping windows closed, and now we're hearing open up the school windows and the school doors. But yet, if you can explain to us the difference of what you had to do in March when we were at our highest rate of COVID cases, compared to what we're doing now, and the complete turnaround and U-turn, even though the cases are going down.
That's perfect. Thanks, Melissa. But in regards to isolation of patients, so if somebody was suspected to have COVID, they were immediately, this was back in March, they were immediately isolated to a room to wait for the results to come back. Whereas we're starting to see now the patients are swabbed and then they're just been put into 6-bedded rooms. So there's the possibility that they could infect everybody else in that room. Also, in regards to the windows and doors, we were told that the COVID, in regards to the windows, had to be closed and the doors to seal it in, because the COVID could escape from the room and blow around the rest of the ward and affect everybody else. So I don't. That's basically crazy what we were told as well, and it's all kind of changing so much that it's one thing one day, something else the next, that we don't even know whether we're coming and going.
It sounds an awful lot of pressure on the healthcare workers, as in just not getting proper instructions, really, and the amount of times it's changing. It's not that you're busier, I believe, that you weren't that busy at all during all of this, compared to this time 12 months ago. But again, can we just go back, and if you can explain to me about the aerosols, please, with the COPD patients that we discussed earlier.
So in regards to what we spoke about, the fact that the windows and doors couldn't be open, for the fact that it could blow around the room and the ward, it was the same in regards to aerosol generating devices. So because the fact that most of these were hooked up to oxygen, and it was propelling the oxygen around the room, there was patients who would have COPD and who would have nebulizers and stuff like that they would normally take regularly. There was a fear that they couldn't be used because they could blow COVID around. And these were only people who could be queried, they could be possibly COVID. There's machines like CPAP and BiPAP, which are also used by people who have sleep apnea. And what they do is they help to maintain the pH level in the body. They were also taken from patients because they were aerosol generating. And there's also a machine called an Airvo as well, and that can be used as well in regards to alleviating breathing problems. But because of the discrepancies in regards to whether these could be used if they were aerosol generating, some of these were taken from the rooms of people who were suspected COVID.
So just to be very clear here, we feel that aids that were there to help people recover were actually removed from the rooms under the device that it was airborne, when we actually know now, and not as scientists are out there saying that it wasn't airborne at all. So now we are finding out that the nebulizers were taking away from people that actually genuinely needed them with serious conditions. And do you feel, as a professional, Rose, and the years and years of experience that you've had, that this was putting people in danger?
I do definitely, yeah, in my own personal feelings and also my professional reasons as a fully qualified nurse. I do definitely, because I've known when patients get nebulizers, they feel relief directly after them. So yeah, and also these CPAP BiPAP machines for sleep apnea, they help to maintain the pH level. So definitely, yeah, 100%.
So maybe we could go as far as say that people were actually put at risk with this idea that the virus was actually airborne when it wasn't, and that people may have suffered unnecessarily, which I do believe as a qualified carer, that is the case here. And maybe we hope to get an investigation into this down the line, Rose, and that you have helped and will help a lot of people into the future in that area. And I suppose maybe I just wanted to ask you there, just in March, we'll go back to March if you don't mind, Rose. And can you tell us what was being used for someone then that was positive or even suspected, I believe, what kind of medication was used at that time in an Irish hospital that you were in March?
The treatment for someone who was COVID positive was hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. So they were the two main medications that were used, along with obviously IV fluids and stuff like that. So in regards to the hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, I have seen many patients successfully treated with this and discharged home.
So you personally witnessed this being a good treatment at that time. Now, we're well aware of Professor Dolores Cahill. I know you're aware of her yourself, Rose. We've spoke of her, and we are aware of the new World Freedom Alliance group, and that they have all over the world been calling out on the hydroxychloroquine. So now we are aware it was being used here in Ireland. And were you or any of the other staff members, or you as a professional qualified nurse, were you ever told as to why that treatment was withdrawn from the hospital? Rose, please.
No, I wasn't even aware that it had been withdrawn. I thought that was the treatment. It was only when it was kind of out in the media about stuff that was said that it wasn't to be used, and I was quite shocked myself when I heard it, to be honest.
Thank you for that, Rose. And if there's other areas where you feel that the media need to know, the public need to know, the hospitals, the HSE need to know what is happening, how you feel as a public frontline worker within what's happening morning, noon and night, and from the swabs to the machinery being taken from patients that might need it seriously. So what other kind of restrictions have you felt?
Other restrictions in regards to the standard of care that we can provide, or I'm just not sure on the question you're asking. Sorry, Melissa.
Maybe just staff-wise, have you felt that you're very understaffed yourself working in that environment, or have you many student nurses? We're aware now the student nurses still are not being paid. And how many times as a professional are you having to be swabbed personally weekly?
Right, so what's happening at the moment in regards to staff is that once the staff member is exposed to a COVID case, they are swabbed, and any other staff member who's been in contact with that patient. So if they call them outbreaks. So if there's an outbreak, any other patient who's in that room who's been in contact with that patient, any professional staff member who has been in contact with that patient as well. So that includes any of the multidisciplinary team as well. So that may be dietitians, physios, nurses, doctors, whoever is exposed to that patient then must go and be swabbed. And if they're swabbed, then they must go for the 14 days to be quarantined and self-quarantine at home before they can come back to work.
So obviously this is leaving you short-staffed on top of, we know every hospital was short-staffed before COVID. So you're really struggling there with this, and my heart goes out to you. And for you to be able to speak out on areas that need to be addressed for the safety of anyone going in to hospital today. And I've spoke to many other brave nurses like yourself, and we're calling on you all to come out, because at the end of the day, we have to find out what's happening behind them closed doors. And people like yourself, Rose, is what this, the people of this country need to get confidence back, to get back into hospital, to get the care they need for cancer, to get the care they need for cardiac care. We know people aren't going in because they're fearful, and they have a right to be fearful when we find out that they were removing nebulizers and areas like this where they actually were getting more care at home. So I want to just put a call out to all the nurses like yourself, Rose, to keep coming to us. And we have many serious investigations going on outside of this chat tonight, with many other carers and nurses that have come, and official investigations have been put forward, and we will protect our people. And we do have that freedom of speech to be able to do so. So, Rose, just you giving out a message, and you're a very brave girl, and thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, and thank you for all this insight as to what's wrong with what's going on in our hospitals, and that's not been covered on media. And thank you, GT, for this platform, because without this, likes of GT and Computing Dave, we would, this would never get out to the media. So can I just say, can you give a message out to the public, Rose, as to what you really want to say?
Thank you. What I really just want to send out to each and every one of you is that we all know how the elderly have been treated is an absolute disgrace. They deserve so much better than this, and as much as each and every one of us needed them when we were children, they need us now. So I urge you, please push to get into the hospitals and the nursing homes to see them. I know some family members have been allowed in to see their families, which I don't understand why this is the case, and in some circumstances, but not across the board. Basically, if I know of old people who I've actually held in my arms, and they've cried as they've just literally lost the will to live, because they begged me to know why their families weren't allowed in to see them, and I didn't have the answer for them. I couldn't tell them anything, only comfort them. It is heartbreaking, guys. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Also, if the PPE gear is that effective, if the gloves, the aprons, and the masks are so effective and they're so good, why can't visitors put them on and go in and see their family members? That's the question that you all need to be asking. And if you do that and you get in and see your family, you're giving them something to live for, because our elderly are giving up life, because their families, their grandchildren, and their children are their life force, their lifeblood. So please just push and even ask the questions, question the narrative, because what you're being told, guys, is not the full story. So thank you.
Ladies,
Very much, Rose. And again,
I'm going to drop Rose out there. Melissa, fantastic work, sterling work. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to congratulate both Rose and Melissa for bringing this to our attention. Melissa, sterling work. Melissa, if people want to follow up and do their own lines of inquiry, how can they contact you? Where would you recommend them to go? And just round us off on the last few seconds, and then we'll sign off.
Homes, it would be the best scenario. And do fight to go in and see your loved ones in the hospital. And this is a message that we've got from many nurses and from many care homes, that we are asking for families to actually put up that fight and go see your loved ones, be it in the hospital, in the professionals. There is no and come and sit up and have a cup of tea. So God bless all and keep strong.
Great stuff, Melissa. Talk to you soon. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we're just going to sign off here. Please, apologies for the breakup in the sound there towards the end, but you can go to Melissa's page, Melissa O'Neill, on Facebook if you want to do some follow-up inquiry. But please listen to our insider, the nurse, encouraging you to go and seek and speak with our elderly. If you do have someone in there, ask that very pertinent question that Rose has asked. If the nurses can wear PPE, if they can visit for 15 minutes, why can't we do it as well? Very important questions. More to follow in this, and I'm sure Melissa will be doing more work behind the scenes. And I encourage you, anybody, and from this channel, why we still have the opportunity, anybody else and any other profession that is involved in the scandemic, please don't feel free to come and speak. We'll do what we do here with Rose. We can mask her voice, we can keep it innocuous, but just please give us that background information and let people decide that they can inform themselves, and then they can carry on whatever needs to be done for the care of their elderly and so forth. Ladies, absolute pleasure. For those of you over on YouTube, as I do, before I let you go, please don't forget, smash that like button. If you haven't done so already, please hit the subscription. It's very important to us that you help maintain the platform's presence over on YouTube. If you're new to the show, please hit the subscription button, and you'll also be reminded of future broadcasts here in the Grand Torino. And then if I beseech you, I importune you, please leave your thoughts, comments, and witticisms in the comment section down below. And let us engage in the conversation there as the start. I know Melissa will be in there. And I know Rose will probably be observing, and you can point some questions there. And I'm sure Melissa can facilitate any answering of the questions in the comment section. But please then go ahead and get in contact directly with Melissa. And again, any other whistleblowers, Melissa is your point of contact, or you can contact me directly on the World Wide Web, grandtorino.ie. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we know the usual format. We are demonetized, but we are not demoralized, and we will keep trying to bring to you these very crucial stories while we are allowed under the censorship of the YouTube and every other thing. I remind you, we've lost our Facebook, and we are still available over on Twitch, Periscope, and DLive for the meantime. But we will be working to try and broadcast from our website, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I'm going to let you go, and please continue on your own investigations. And a big congratulations to Rose, our insider, for coming forward. Very well done, very brave. Us.